Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. On this week's video, in case you hadn't guessed from the introduction, we're taking a closer look at the guitar tone on Black Dog from Led Zeppelin IV. Now, funnily enough, this is actually a track that intrigued me for a very long time. I remember learning to play it when I was younger and being intrigued and perplexed in equal measure by not only the arrangement, but the time signature. It's uniquely Page and it's uniquely Bonham, and it really, still to this day, to be honest, on occasion, throws me off. You really have to bring your A game and be concentrated to make sure that you're not slightly ahead or behind the beat. It's quite difficult to nail. However, what has really intrigued me about this track more recently is the guitar tone, which I guess you could say is less uniquely Jimmy Page, or less identifiably Jimmy Page. So, having done a succession of these videos on YouTube recently in regard to how they got the sound or how they got the tone, decided to do a little bit of research to see if there was any info actually available, specifically about the recording of this track. And much to my amazement, I found a really in-depth interview with the engineer on that record, Andy Johns, outlining the specific process that they went through to really get that tone. I'd been trying to get this sound from Buffalo Springfield for a long time, and I met Bill House. He said, just put two 1176 in series. It was a direct sound and I thought that I knew what to do. There were these three guitars on Black Dog, so I triple tracked it. When I mixed it, these three guitars were down here and the rest of the tracks were up here. Since the sound was so loud, it gave me much more room with the other stuff. Anyways, he meant two 1176 in series, one of which has the compression buttons punched out, so it's like an amp. You hit the front of the next compressor really hard and make the mic amp distort with a bit of EQ. So, Black Dog has a direct Gibson Les Paul going right into the mic amps on the mixer, which is going through two 1176, and it sounds like some guy in the Albert Hall with a bunch of Marshalls. Now, funnily enough, this process isn't really a million miles away from some of the videos I've covered recently, namely Purple Rain, more obviously the Beatles' Revolution, the guitar tone on that being a great example of direct to desk, and obviously the solo on Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd had a large percentage of direct sound. So, that in mind, I decided to set about trying to really recreate this guitar tone to see how close I could get. Now, my first port of call when really trying to recreate or emulate this sound is to use Guitar Rig by Native Instruments, just because it gives you a great visual representation of what is actually happening, hopefully gives you a better understanding. So as the process described by Andy suggests, I've used first compression unit, not so much for the compression element, but to really dime the outputs to make sure what hits the next compressor is really a cranked overdriving signal. Digital compressors famously not as kind of drastic as real-world hardware, so I've actually used two in series before hitting a third VC76, Guitar Rig's emulation of the classic 1176 compressor, to try and get as close as I can to the tone. In isolation, it sounds a little bit like this. However, as Andy suggested, one key element to this particular track is that there are actually three guitar parts going on. I've given them all exactly the same treatment. I've just played them separately 3 times to give that sort of uniquely Jimmy-esque kind of looseness, I guess. And if you stack the 3 together and pan them as I'm kind of hearing them on the track, get something a little bit like this. couple that with a subtle bit of EQ adjustment just to give that slightly nasally mid-rangey sound that you associate with this track, and I'd like to say that we're getting fairly close. I mean, it's not what you would call a necessarily pretty guitar sound in isolation. As I said, it's pretty much like a buzzsaw. It's very dry, very harsh, very in your face, but if you then combine that with the bass and the drums and obviously the vocals, hopefully we're getting somewhere in the ballpark. And there you have it. Hopefully I got somewhere in the ballpark. It's difficult to tell because the isolated master tracks aren't actually available or readily available at the very least for Black Dog, so I can't do a direct comparison, I'm afraid. So the best I can offer is that you A/B it with the actual track. As I said, I would like to say I'm somewhere in the ballpark, but as ever, the meaning or the intended idea behind this video is just to give you a better appreciation of the process behind it, and obviously with such a great interview by Andy Johns available, giving you some of the specific details behind what actually went on. As ever, I'm Chris Buck. This has been Friday Fretworks. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if so, I shall see you next week for another Friday Fretworks. Cheers guys, take care, and I shall see you soon.